guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Bill Gates thinks there's a new flu epidemic lurking just around the corner, and he says we're unprepared for it. The billionaire philanthropist warned Friday that there is a significant probability of a large and lethal modern-day pandemic occurring in our lifetimes. Gates made the comments while speaking at the Massachusetts Medical Society and the New England Journal of Medicine. Gates said there's a potential new flu that could wipe out as many as 33 million people worldwide in a matter of just 6 months. He warned that the world, and the United States in particular, are falling behind in pandemic preparedness.
Okay, welcome back everyone. We're live with Anonymous Bites Back, Coronavirus Exposed Part 1. Record number of viewers already. Please help share this, because we'll give some information you probably won't get anywhere else. Now that we're seeing more and more infections all over the world, it's really getting serious now, so we have to provide some reliable information. So welcome everyone. I guess.
Welcome everyone.
So what do you guys want to start with? Well, we watched the whole Bill Gates thing in the intro, right? The announcement he made about a year ago that there would be like a big outbreak of a virus that would be that would like shock the world, right? And he gave these speeches about it. He gave like a TED talk about it, and he was talking about NATO and about a global response team, global emergency team, and I'm not sure, maybe we should talk about that first. Like, what do you guys think about that?
First of all, what Bill Gates said in such videos has driven our attention because he was mentioning as a solution that sending NATO soldiers to areas with epidemic would be viable. And then in the next parts, he was talking about adenovirus suggested as gene therapy, and he was talking about it in such a positive way as a solution. So we started wondering that what is this adenovirus which is used in gene therapy, and he was talking about creating a vaccine and talking about other type of coronaviruses. This is how we started our research, actually.
Yeah, because Bill Gates he actually talked about adenoviruses as actually like a good thing, right? To infect people with it and to actually what was it? To create like immunity for things or to vaccinate people or
Yes, he was talking about adenoviruses as in gene therapies because these are very small viruses and they could actually go through human immune system because when a foreign subject is injected into the cells, human immune system will reject it. For it not to reject it, adenovirus was being mutated and adapted to human body so that it could be useful in gene therapy. So that they actually started playing with the virus and started creating other types of it. And it was one of the studies that was being done in Wuhan laboratory, which was 300 meters away from the seafood market in Hubei. And they had taken some samples from the seafood market from bats, and they were experimenting adenovirus on these bats.
yeah, and they were even selling them, right? These viruses.
We saw that we were actually researching if this virus was actually a hybrid, a kind of hybrid, because from all these announcements, we always heard that this was a RNA virus. Actually, viruses are divided into two groups. One is the DNA viruses and the other is the RNA virus. So this RNA virus was introduced to us like similar to SARS, MERS, which are also RNA viruses. But the thing is that this virus actually carried a code, a specific code from adenovirus that they were testing in Wuhan laboratory. So we started suspecting that this could be a hybrid, and they mixed adenovirus, which is a DNA virus actually, with an RNA virus. Such hybrids are possible, and in the USA private laboratories, there are viruses on sale that anyone can buy, and these are mixtures of adenovirus and SARS viruses. So it is possible.
Okay. Should we put in a picture? Which one should we start with?
We should maybe start with showing some basic gene terminology pictures first so that our listeners will understand what we are talking about.
The RNA one, right?
The RNA one and what is genetic code and what is nucleotide.
Okay. Okay, you want me to put in the second one first or the first one first?
Second one is okay.
Yeah, I think that is the easiest one. Yeah, meanwhile you guys can keep talking. I mean, like, I will just load it in.
We will be showing you some tables of genetical sequences. Now we know that none of us are genetical engineers, and but we all are curious researchers, and it's not so hard to understand what these all are about. When you see the pictures, you can understand much better that you will see the genetic code picture first. That all these letters, one of them, each of them are actually nucleobases. They are called nucleobases, and there are four kinds of nucleobases in each DNA or RNA sequences. When they come together, they create the characters in viruses. Environmental adaptability, for it to multiply itself faster, all kinds of traits could be seen.
Yeah, well, you were saying that it is already on the background, so people can see the three bases.
So the first one is A, it's called adenine, and second one is thymine, and third one is G, guanine, and C is cytosine. So their names really don't matter, but maybe the first one, the A one, the adenine one, will matter in the upcoming talks.
Okay, yeah, so I had that first, that second one loaded in. I'll load in the first one now. Then you see the four different groups.
Yeah, so the first one is RNA ribonucleic acid, and the second one is DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. RNA is more like proteins, and DNA is more like our genetical code. But RNA also could carry genetical code, and you can see that it has only one side, and DNA has the two sides. So from the news, we see that they have been calling this virus an RNA virus, but it is actually very possible that this virus is a hybrid one. You can see how these proteins are actually coming together, like they are made of atoms, and they have the carbon atoms. They get together and make up the chemical substance of these acidic sequences. So we will be calling each of these letters as nucleobases, and when they get together, like if 6 or 9 of them get together, they become the genetical code. We could call them codes.
Okay. So that is how that people can get some kind of an image of what these weird codes mean, right? They represent the actual parts of the whole DNA thing.
Yes. So it is very important that they are actually lined in a way that they make up of different kinds of viruses, different kind of bacteria. It is the essential part which makes the characters of the viruses. So that if, for example, adenine comes first and guanine comes second, it really matters a lot, and when they change place, it becomes entirely something else. We should keep this in mind.
Mhm. Like there are only four possible um, nuclear base. However, like the sequence of them, the order of them, could contribute to entirely different viruses.
Okay. Okay, and so the next step is we posted before. We posted like a picture on Twitter, right? And it showed like the different discoveries, the different virus that uploaded genetic codes of the different viruses. You had like the China upload, an Italy upload, Thailand, United States, and in some codes we saw differences.
Yes. I think we should start with the poly-A tail.
Oh yeah,
Right, and
oh yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I'll upload that. I'll put that picture in first. Yeah.
Okay. I think meanwhile we can just talk about the poly-A tail.
Definitely.
Yeah, just talk about it. I see that error.
Okay, so the poly-A tail usually happens to be at the end of the virus. I mean, at the end of the sequence. So, um, in the picture, they are highlighted in different colors.
The picture is put in now.
Okay. And what does it do is that on mRNAs, they protect the mRNA molecule from uh, enzymatic degradation in the cytoplasm. And,
Maybe we should explain what is mRNA.
okay, can you do that?
Yes. Sometimes organisms create some kinds of codes by themselves to protect themselves or to pass through their characters to their next generations when they multiply. So these are called messenger RNA, so that they actually pass through the message. In here you can see that there are many AAA going on, and these are actually adenine. But the fact that why they are repeating is because of the messenger RNA repeating itself over and over.
Right. And the entire sequence that are made up of multiple A's are called the poly-A tail.
Yeah, just real quick. In all the uploaded codes, and at the end of all these genetic codes, you find this whole string of A. Like and like Smyler says, this is like an so-called polytail.
Poly-A tail. Because there are like multiple A's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that actually the virus is creating a tail for itself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what does that mean exactly?
What does it mean? Depends on what it does, which is it protects itself from enzymatic degradation. Should we like also explain on that one?
Yeah.
So enzymatic degradation happens when an organism changes habitat. So when it changes habitat or environment and enters a different environment, it has to do something to protect itself. We could actually make it resemble to a rocket going through the Earth's atmosphere. That when a rocket enters the atmosphere, it burns, so that it actually loses the outside capsule. So it could actually protect its body. This tail works like this. When the virus enters a different environment, It goes through enzymatic degradation. It actually loses some codes. Not to lose from the body itself, from the character itself, it actually loses from the tail.
Yes. So basically, this is the outer part of it that protects its inner part from being destroyed. So if there's something that happens, this part would be compromised first before like the inside would be changed, like in order to adapt to the new environment.
So it is the reason that why messenger RNA is repeating itself over and over to create a tail, so that it would just lose from tail when the enzymatic degradation happens due to change of environment.
So like the poly A tail started to be longer, and then it will be shortened over time, over changes of environment. If that makes sense.
Yes, actually, we found out something interesting about the tail that, like Smiler said, as the flight distance extends, the tail was getting much shorter. Um, so that we thought virus was possibly staying in a sterile, isolated environment a longer enough period to lose from tail much more. For example, from China to USA, there is the 14-15 hours flight. Then it would lose more of its tail, and the tail would be much shorter than when it lands in Australia, for example.
Yeah, because like um, for this outbreak, we can tell that it's going from place to place, uh, most frequently by flight, by planes. So it started in Wuhan, but it spread to the entire world. And it's not like by train from a place to another, all on land, but it's always on air. So that's why we started to suspect maybe the isolated environment on the plane, because um, that would last for quite some time, and that could actually be a very different environment from the one on ground, and that could potentially um, make the virus started to change and adapt to the kind of new environment that the virus is at that time combating. So that's how we see the correlation of the change in the polyatal from the China kind of sequence to the Sweden one, to the USA one, and to the Brazil one. So actually, Brazil is the location that takes the longest time to travel to, say by plane, and they happen to have the shortest polyatal.
And the Taiwan one loses its tail entirely, and it could be because of other possibility that actually the virus was traveling through both, and it would take about the same time. And if it was traveling on a furniture, a metal, something like that, because it sticks on object, it would take much longer. So that in Taiwan, it is possible that when it first landed, some kind of longer distance happened.
Or another reason that we don't know that changes its environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, but other than the Taiwan one, the other ones make sense a lot if you're considering like the distance between that country and China.
Okay, so to make it simple for listeners, the fire starts out with like this whole tail of ace, and when it moves to another location, it goes on like a plane or like a boat, it actually loses a part of the tail. and not from the it doesn't lose like a part of the whole virus code. It loses only a part of the tail normally, because the tail is like created to protect the virus from changing.
Yes, because the tail doesn't involve any characters, so that they are just empty, blank. They just carry the message through, and their function is just that.
It's like you explained with the space shuttle thing, that it drops the fuel things and it doesn't, and the rocket just keeps on moving.
Yes, because if it loses ace, it really doesn't lose anything from its character.
Okay.
And another thing is that this kind of tail is also seen in hybrid viruses. So that when we talk about if this could have the adenovirus, it is important to point out that this is also seen in hybrid viruses. Maybe we have to explain why it matters that if this is a mixture from adenovirus.
So just one thing I would want to add. So another reason why we think it's about the the location instead of the dates that changes is ATEL is because, for example, in China, the first sequence that was released in 12th of January has the same length of the other one that was collected in 28th of January and even later. Like for all those in China, they remain to be kind of in the same length, like the polyatel. And also, for example, in those two instances of the USA ones, so the first one was collected on in 19th of January and the second one was in the 23rd of February, which has been a month apart. I mean, yeah, in collection date. However, the length of the polyatel also remains the same. So that's why we thought it might not be like it might not be affected by the date after. Oh, I mean, yeah, that's why we're thinking like the location may be contributing more than we thought about the date of collection and so on.
Okay. So I'm going to mention this what I just put in the chat. So what these people say is that it's an RNA virus. It's like SARS. So they're also going to call it SARS-CoV-2. But the brain CT scans and the brain tissue analysis at the Hubei hospital showed that the virus is more similar to adenovirus than to SARS. So, and that makes it possible that it's a hybrid and not RNA only. And then then it says when a different animal species plays the intermediate factor, it helps it being a hybrid too, and that matters because this virus carries code belonging to adenovirus, and that was being tested at the Wuhan lab to create something from bad samples to break through the human immune system. And this exact poly-A tail is seen in hybrid viruses too. So what do we say about this? I think it's pretty shocking to listeners, to be honest.
A lot of new information. Yeah, it seems like it could be a hybrid virus because, for example, in MERS and SARS, they don't have that poly-A tail, and this one, it's almost a signature. It's always there, in a lot of samples that we saw. So it's not like only one or two mutated. That's why it got the poly-A tail. No, everything started with a poly-A tail.
And hybrid viruses can carry poly-A tails. Another point that we can mention is that adenoviruses can turn into coronaviruses too. Another indication could be that in the USA private laboratories such viruses are on sale and anyone can obtain them. And in some of these laboratories there are mixtures of viruses that carries both adenovirus and SARS in it. So they are the mixture of adenoviruses and SARS. It is possible to create such hybrids, and they would still carry such poly-A tail.
Okay. Okay, and so the part about it containing actual code belonging to adenovirus, this was that what that actually we discovered this ourselves in the code of this virus.
Wait, what are you referring to?
No, I like I'm reading this statement we just brought out that uh, that this virus actually contains code belonging to adenovirus. How did you find out about this?
Yes, that in the Wuhan laboratory, 300 meters away from the Hubei seafood market, Chinese scientists were experimenting with the adenovirus that specifically on bat samples that they were experimenting with adenovirus to create a kind of gene therapy. When they were experimenting, they were having the adenovirus go through mutation so that it would actually break through a human immune system. Because when you use any kind of substances in human cells through injection, human immune system would reject it because it's a foreign substance. To be able to break through immune system, they would require to be very tiny, like adenoviruses, and also to go through some kind of mutation to hold specific type of codes. So in Wuhan laboratory, Chinese scientists were able to obtain such a code, and in almost all sequences taken from each countries that have the Wuhan virus COVID-19, it includes the specific code inside them. And not just that, but in the first line, like the viruses are based on that code. And you can call this code AGA-TCT. It is how the nucleobases are in order, like adenine, guanine, adenine, thymine, cytosine, and thymine again. So that we see the exact same code in almost all kinds of samples taken from each country which the virus spreads.
Okay, so that's interesting. So in Wuhan they were actually testing with this code to break through the human immune system, and they were doing this with the adenoviruses, and then we see this exact code showing up in this COVID-19 virus. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, and it is how the subjects actually get connected back to Bill Gates' talk, because where he was talking about gene therapy through adenoviruses, and that in this Wuhan lab also they were working on gene therapy on bat samples with adenoviruses, so that the code comes from there.
Okay. Yeah, to listeners, I want to say sorry if there's dead air, but it is like a lot of reading, and we can't make like mistakes on this, like because we don't want to like give out uh, lies or whatever, or fake news. We need to actually stick to the truth, and there's a lot of reading. I had to scroll back a few days. Yeah, so and that is it makes it weird, right? You have like you look at Bill Gates and having his speeches, the one we had in the intro, with then we had the one in the TED talk, and that he actually discussed using adenoviruses for gene therapy, and then they're like testing with these labs to actually edit these adenoviruses, and they're selling them, and they're creating them, and creating this code to break through the human immune system, because of course that makes it difficult for them to do their so-called gene therapy if the immune system rejects it. And then suddenly we see this whole code turning up in the COVID-19, and we see that the actual virus first arrives close to the actual lab where they're testing these things. Whether on purpose or by accident, that doctors took it back home with them on their clothing or whatever and walked on the market. So this makes it a very strange story, for one.
And almost all samples taken from all spreading areas carry this code, and not only carry it, but it carries it on its first line, as if the virus is based on that. Even if the virus goes through some changes, it still protects this code in it.
Yeah, true, because for a lot of changes that we saw, it's usually at the end. So first, the poly-A tail would change, and then after that, we also saw an instance where one of the code in the Australia one was just that one block of it was gone, but that is towards the end as well.
And then is another strange thing. Maybe guys can comment on it. This is kind of like a little. Okay, it's a difficult subject to do, but it's like this. It comes from a study by Broderick MP in London in 2010. It says adenovirus seropositivity is strongly associated with race and gender, but not obesity among US military personnel. I want to mention this too.
Yes, because adenoviruses actually spreads among specific races than specific weights, specific ages, or any kind of traits.
Well, this is
Race,
why I
for
want to
example.
mention it real quick. That is that actually at the end of that study it says relationships between exposure and age, race, and gender were found. And now we do notice that with this coronavirus, it kind of hits a specific age more and a specific gender more than others, right? It targets more men, for example. Uh, More older people and less young people are affected by it. Also, in the sense that there are almost no dads below the age of 10, if I'm correct. I think there's still 0, but to confirm that. So that also again, if that study says that adenoviruses actually have that specific aspect in it, that makes it interesting too, right? When you look at this virus.
Yes, because it shows that there are different variables that virus is affected by. A race could be one of them, and other could be weather conditions, and another variable could be environmental changes.
Okay, and the picture you just posted shows that that is like the similarities between the adenovirus and this one, that they have like a identical nucleobase, if I'm correct.
Yes, because to be able to explain what we are looking at, we wanted to mention what terminology we are using. And as we mentioned at the beginning with the pictures, these first group, you can see that these are the nucleobases. The letters that T or C or A, they are the nucleobases. So you can see that identical nucleobases here are 3, but identical code is 0, because the code would be the entire thing, entire block, which are made from many letters. And in the second group, you could see that identical nucleobases are 20, and identical codes are 2, because you could see that the blocks are exactly the same, because the in the sequence their order matter a lot.
Okay, so yeah, I got the picture on the background now, and so like Amber explains, this is these are the similarities between. We mentioned that there are similarities between the adenovirus that was being tested in the Wuhan laboratory, close to where the outbreak was, and the actual COVID-19 coronavirus. And you can see here the similarities between it, and you see on top you see the identical nucleobase is 3, and the second example you see identical nucleobase is 20. There you can actually in simple terms see that there are similarities. Alright?
You could actually see that when we call it nucleobase, we would be calling the letters as nucleobases.
Yeah.
It's how they are called. And when we call the codes, we could be calling the entire block of letters codes, and their order matters a lot. So when we talk about the tables that we are going to show you from genetical sequences, you would be understanding that when we say nucleobases, they would mean single letters, and when you talk about codes, you would understand that they are the blocks, entire blocks of letters coming together, like 6 or 9 of them.
It's actually 10 for this one.
Yes,
I mean, like the complete one will be 10, but usually the last block will.
yeah, because in-house due to it losing from its tail, as we explained at the beginning.
So should we compare between the Wuhan one and the one of the other countries?
Okay, real quick in between, I want to mention to listeners, I see some of you replying that you get thrown out of the Periscope stream. We can't help with that. It happens. I have it too sometimes. I don't know. I don't have an explanation for it. You can actually use the alternative stream at youtube.com/anonymousbytesback. You find there the stream too, and the YouTube one also works fine always. So. You have the and same at twitch.tv/anonymousbytesback. You'll find the stream there too. But if you have problems with the Periscope one, use one of those. So you guys want to compare the Wuhan one with the other areas, right?
Yes, and when we will show the next tables, Wuhan origin one would be appearing with the other areas to compare.
I'm loading in the picture now. That is the one with the Wuhan in Australia, right?
Yes, Wuhan original one is the first when and where the virus appeared in China, in Wuhan, and the next would be the area that we are comparing.
So this one, is the picture already there or something?
The picture is there now.
Okay. So this one, the one from Australia is actually quite similar to the one in Wuhan. So other than that one block that is different, everything is identical. So what is different is that the block that is highlighted in red, it was there in the one from Wuhan originally, but in the one that is in Australia, that block is gone, and this only happened in one that is from Australia among the other ones that we've been looking at.
Yeah. So I have a question directly. How come that block is different, but the actual poly A tail is still there?
Yeah, that is one really good question. We kind of have a speculation on that, but not entirely sure. I think we should compare that with the one from Brazil. Where's the one from Brazil?
Okay, because well, as we explained before, that this virus actually protects against changes by having this whole poly A tail, and if it enters a different environment, it would shorten the tail or remove the tail. But here we see an entirely different code, while the tail is still there.
Yes, you can see above in Wuhan origin the red rectangle. That code is missing from Australia, basically. But all the other things are the same, except for the tail is getting shorter.
Yeah. So what is your theory on that? Is it like this is like a different virus, or?
Speculation is that the environment changes that block, and it was very sudden. That's why the poly A tail was not yet compromised.
Okay.
Like that was the speculation. So because I'll put the picture here. So if we put it together, the second last line and the last line of the one of Australia and Brazil, um, we're putting them together in comparison because like the speculation was about the environmental change, and we believe that could be very much contributed by the temperature because um, if you're going directly from let's say China to Australia or Brazil, the biggest difference would possibly be the temperature because um, in there it's still summer right now, but in China that would already, I mean, it's like going from a winter place to a summer place. So that's the temperature difference. And for that we wonder, like, why did that happen? Probably so rapidly and in such a big degree in Australia, but not in Brazil because they were both in the southern hemisphere. And we think that might be because of the collection date. So in Australia, the collection date was 25th of January, and the one in Brazil was 28th of February. And we checked the temperature of those 2 days. Um, where's the temperature?
Well, it's obviously losing a huge part of the tail.
Yeah, like we believe the losing of the huge part of tail in the Brazil one was because it has time to adapt. So the blocked inside in the middle one was not compromised, but the outside was, like when it was adapting to the environment. But the Australia one, it didn't get to do that because it was such a shock to the person who has the virus. That was the speculation. So the temperature in Brazil was between 11 and 24 degrees.
Centigrade degree.
Yes, and the one in Australia was 22 to 28 degrees. So that is way warmer. Not like way warmer, but significantly warmer. And one thing about these kinds of viruses are that they do not thrive in warm places. So that's why it might be a little bit more shocking for the virus to adapt to the Australia environment. But we also realized one thing. So 2 days before the date of collection, actually the temperature in Australia hit the highest of the month. It went to 41.3 degrees. So that might have been the reason why that block was gone, because it was trying to adapt to that really hot temperature of 41 degrees.
And in such a short time, we should remind our listeners, because from China to Brazil, it would take much longer to travel, and virus would have time to adapt slowly. And when it landed, Brazil is still less warmer, much less warmer than in Australia.
Okay. So,
Yeah, from a winter temperature to 22 degrees and from a winter temperature directly to 41 degrees is a huge difference in adaptation.
so say that then it shows like an actual mutation, I guess, instead of an adapting. Uh, you guys are saying like if it goes slow, it uses the whole tail and it shortens the tail or whatever. And but if it's like sudden, it has to change the entire genetic code.
It just couldn't find the time to adapt, or just to go through that adaptation slowly, to lose from tail, from the harmless part, and instead it went through a kind of shock, so that it actually lost the important part of the code, which is from the main body of the virus.
Yeah, and one thing to highlight is that that part did not change. It is dropped. It's lost. So
So it's kind of like a sacrifice. We could actually give an example from winter time. A person goes to a very cold area and they are about to be frozen and not to entirely get frozen for survival. They just cut their toes, for example. When they cut their toes, at least they survive and they can save the remaining part of their leg. Uh, it is like that, so that in this instance, the virus sacrifices one coat of itself and protects the rest of it.
yeah, right.
It's weird, right? I told you this too before, Amber. Like, it's strange that when you're talking about like the code on paper, but then what's suggesting you start to realize it is actually like an organism, right? It is like adapting in such a way. We're dealing with an organism and not with just like code on paper.
Definitely, it has its own survival instinct, so that no matter what, it wants to survive, stay alive, and still multiply, so that it sacrifices to be able to still survive in different environments it spreads to.
Yeah.
Shall we get to the Italy and Thailand ones?
You girls, go ahead. It's like way over my head. So
Okay.
maybe posting the picture and then I don't know. I just try to translate it in the simplest ways for listeners. If I fail at it, I'm sorry about it, but it is.
You're doing an explanation, like those things. Yeah. Okay, so for this one, um, there are a lot of squares in there. The square part are the part that are identical, but the position of the codes are shifted. I mean, the nuclear base are shifted into different codes. So for these two,
Slow it in now.
okay. Yeah. So for the sequence of the ones from Italy and Thailand, unfortunately, we do not have the complete sequence to compare the everything. And even though they are numbered from 1 and then going down there, but we're not sure whether this is actually starting from the very first sequence. So there's the disclaimer. And what we found is that so there are also instances of this coronavirus. That's why they are identical actually to the first one found in Wuhan. However, it is not like 100% the same. First thing, the length was different, and the second thing is that it is not mapping directly to the first sequence of the Wuhan one. So for example, in Thailand one, it was collected 19th of January, rather close to the one that was released by the Chinese government in Wuhan. So not so long after the outbreak. So you can see like the first sequence in the Thailand one actually started in 18,421 line of the Wuhan sequence. That is one weird thing, and we actually took a long time to realize like from which part do they start correlating. I mean, aligning to each other. And then in the one that is in Italy, the part they are identical started even later. So yeah, you can tell. It's almost to the end of the sequence because the last line would be 28 no 29,821. So that's towards the end already. That like the part they are identical. So after we found the part they are identical, everything that follows are all identical.
Okay.
So like basically the thing shifted and it cropped out a part of the Wuhan coronavirus. I mean the original one.
Yeah, so we don't know why the virus is doing this, but it is sliding the entire sequence uh, without changing anything in it. But when it slides to the beginning and it starts losing some of its code from the start. To compensate it, um, in one instance that we don't see here but we will mention later, in one instance it adds the missing part, it tries to add to the end of it. But in here, like Smiler said, in Italy and Thailand, since they aren't complete sequences, they couldn't be completed yet in the laboratories. Um, we don't see what is happening and where is the missing code. We just know that at the start there is the missing code, but all the rest are the same.
So personally speaking, if you are saying like there's a mutation somewhere, this sounds more like a mutation than the loss of the polyatom. Because this actually changes the body of the virus instead of just the outer part, the not so important part. This changes the character of the virus.
Yes, so maybe it could be an answer to why we see in Italy the virus is spreading more and um, it's just much more contagious. It might be the answer to that.
Yeah, that is possible because we can see like in Italy the death rate is really high in comparison to many other places that have spread to uh, infect a lot of people. But the serious case, the critical case, and the death case are rather low.
Yeah, that is actually a good point.
Another different type is coming from China again, collected in 29th January because it was seen as the first time then, and now we will see how it is different from the original Wuhan virus.
Mhm.
I'm loading it in. 1 second.
So what is interesting is that this virus actually was found in China itself. So probably it did not take flight. It was not isolated from the ground. Not in one place with weird air pressure and not so familiar kind of um, contained environment. It was in China. However, for this one, we found it to be a lot more different from the original one, even in comparison to the ones overseas.
It's loaded in.
Yeah, okay.
So what you guys are saying this virus is a lot different than the first find, but it didn't actually travel anywhere. It was just in the same region. So there isn't really a good explanation for it.
Mm-hmm. So we're
Um,
comparing like the start and the end of the sequence. In both places, uh, they were also very different from the Wuhan one.
You do see
yes,
it.
uh, in the publications, it's sometimes mentioned that there are two different types coming from two different places. It is not like it's just the same virus, but it goes through some distinct change.
Mhm. Yeah, this really changes a lot. Like for some part, we can't even think of a very rational reason to it. Okay, so again, the squares in the same color are highlighting the nuclear bases that are identical. So in the beginning of the sequence, from line 1 to line 121, so we can tell it did not directly copy to its first sequence, not like the one in Italy or Thailand, because they started to be identical with the one from Wuhan in their first sequence, like first nuclear base in the first code. But this is different. First, it did not um, copy that part, that identical part, to the first nuclear base of its code. There was something new, and we don't know what is that or where that is from. So probably this one made some effort into having something new. And that was actually quite a big chunk. So actually like 20 nuclear, no, 22, yeah. 22 nuclear base was coming out of nowhere.
Okay, and what also interests me is with you guys are looking at the same picture, right? So did you see the third block is called China 29 January, and you see then at that line 29881 you see suddenly this weird AAA thing too.
Yes, it is.
Uh,
Yeah, you mean the polyatal was.
it is in between the normal
Mm-hmm.
blocks. Should that be there like that?
We don't even know what is that.
No, because I did read about this genetics thing, and it says that weird repeating characters are always like are like signs of a mutation.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that could be a mutation starting, but we don't know yet.
yeah, because it's like in the middle. It should be at the end, right? If we're like a polyatrial, it should be at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
This one is like right in between. I don't see it in the others, only in this one.
Yeah, I think this is the. Oh, let me see the other one.
I don't see
Yes,
it.
this is the only one that has something after the polyatal that
Yeah,
looks like a regular code.
yeah, exactly.
So we actually
So
found another one that is weird. The one collected January 8th. Remember, Amber?
yes,
Yeah, but I just checked. That one has a extremely short polyatal, but still nothing weird like this after the polyatal.
yeah, it just showed very much similarity to 29th, this 29th January China one. For the rest of the code, but the order is entirely different in this China 29th uh, January one than China one original one. As you can see in the 29th January China one, as if it adds something at the beginning, so that when they slide, uh, it actually shortens the poly A tail, but it stays in the middle somehow, and it adds more codes at the end after the poly A tail. Now it might be due to genetic codes sliding. Um, we don't know how else we can call it. But what matters is you can see in the China 29 January 1 the AGA TCT, the original code from the adenovirus from Wuhan lab is still there.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what it goes through, it still protects the code in itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that is the part that uh, is required to be adapted um, to human.
Yes,
Like to stay in human, it needs that part. Yeah.
yes, to go through human genes and to go through human immune system.
Yeah, but they shifted into the second code in the 61 one.
Yes, somehow it looks like in 20th on 20th January the virus added some kind of different characters to itself.
Mm-hmm.
But for this one, we don't see it elsewhere as copying itself or spreading itself. It's more like it's still Wuhan original one is spreading rather than this one.
Yeah, yeah, this is not so widespread.
Yeah, it's as if it is like dying out
Yeah.
there and it doesn't continue.
It could be like a failure in mutation.
Yeah, it could be, definitely.
That happens a lot.
Okay. Okay, post a new picture.
Okay. Oh yeah, so by the way, we should also mention in that one paper about, I think it was about SARS, the bad one, that mentioned there was one example where only 10 of the nuclear base was changed. However, it could already change from one host to the other. So very little, very minor changes could already do a lot to the entire sequence.
Okay.
But the one just now we saw are actually like very different from the Wuhan one if we're considering like 10 of the nuclear base changing could already turn it into adapting to another host. Because we're seeing um, at least 30 of the new nuclear base there. Yeah, at least 30.
So it's actually a big change.
Yeah, it is a big change.
I got it loaded in now. I hope it's visible to everyone.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because it's...
So if we're talking about like 10 nuclear base among this entire almost 30,000, so we would see a very high similarity in all the viruses, which we do see it in here.
yeah, with the Australian one being the most different.
Yeah. So if we're comparing only everything that aligns perfectly, um, there's a huge number in Australia because it shifted for one code. But if we manually change that part, like ship it back there, the number is only 29. So that is still less than the difference in the one we just mentioned. The one was collected on 29th of January in China. So that is still more different than the Australia one. But the Australia one is the um, second most different. Because for the other one, is like the ATAL is lost, and then some minor changes are in there, but that's all. Yeah, but the Australian one loses the entire code.
It's strange because the 28th January one is still very much the same as the December 19 from Wuhan. But
Yeah.
so the later one is like entirely different suddenly. We saw it lose the entire. We saw it put like a tail inside the code, or it put code at the end of the tail, which is weird.
I think it's code at the end of the tail, because if we're just looking at the part that are identical with the Wuhan one, the A tail's there, and then after the A tail there's nothing. But in the other China one there are something else, something new after the A tail.
To remind to our listeners that we didn't add the China 29th January one to this table for the similarities, because it would make a huge difference because of the sliding gene codes sliding thing changes the whole thing, despite the fact that the whole body is protected, almost all genes, all gene codes are the same, but still the order is entirely different, which would change the similarity percentages entirely. This is why we didn't include it in this the similarity table in this, but you can see the rest of the samples from other countries and areas, and you can see almost all of them are identical, very similar to each other.
Okay.
And the ones that are a little bit more different actually um, kind of maintain the number of different nuclear base across time. So like even if they are collected on different dates, the number of different nuclear bases are kind of still the same.
Yeah, so it actually makes it weird because, like, if you look at like the Brazil one from like 28th February, or the Sweden one, they're still pretty much very much the same as the original one, and then you see like this new China one, which is about at the same time as the Brazil one, is like totally different.
No, actually, it's not at the same time with the Brazil one. The Brazil one was February 28th, and the China one was collected in January. So
Oh,
a month before that.
oh, even that is
And
even worse then.
yeah, that part, I mean, like, just personal comments, speculations. um, I do think the virus started spreading way earlier because of that. Because usually when it starts spreading, it will not mutate like immediately, especially when it is in the same environment. But that one in 29th of January kind of showed like a possibility of it already spreading there for quite some time. So the virus was trying to mutate itself and then try an era and try and this is another era of those. That is possible. And for the ones that spread outside, because like you can tell those, especially in the USA ones, they are extremely similar. even though it's been more than a month, they are still very similar. So probably takes more than 1 month um, time to kind of for the virus to change its head and tail.
We should also would like to remind our listeners that USA is a large area, but the virus was carried through flight, so it had to stay in an isolated environment, and first it had to adapt to this environment, and then it landed on a different environment than in China. This is why they are actually almost identical.
Mm-hmm. They were in a very controlled environment, just like a lab.
Yes,
Okay, so worldwide, to make it simple, like worldwide, we see like a huge change in the Australian one because of the sudden temperature change. That's why that one is much different than the others. You can see in this list on the background. Um, but the Wuhan virus at 29 January is even more different than the original China Wuhan one, and there is not really a good explanation for it. Um, the Italian one is also very different, and that's why we we speculate that that's the reason why it is being so much more aggressive there in Italy, I think. Um,
Oh yeah, for the Italy and the Thailand ones, we could not put it here as well because the sequence was not complete. So we could not compare so much of it. There was just like 5, 6 lines that we could compare. It's not fair to put a percentage on that one.
no, yeah, it would be nice for the shock effect, but it's not really what we're supposed to do. Um, so we gave. Someone said something funny. Sorry. Should we go to the next step? Do we have? Do you have anything in mind?
based on this, we can say that we read a lot of things in the news, and we wonder actually what is going on with this virus and what kind of a virus this is, why it changes through time according to countries, what it does when it goes to another country. So we try to give answers to these questions, just as random people actually who don't have the necessary education like genetical engineering or stuff like this. But we just wanted to present you something that we all could understand and see actually what is going on. Also because from different kinds of laboratories, different results are coming out. For example, in China, scientists are saying that the virus is going through several mutations and it's getting stronger. But in France, from Pasteur laboratory, we hear that they say there is no mutation at all, and the virus didn't need any mutation to get stronger or spreading more. It didn't need that. So we wanted to see what is going on ourselves, and as you can see that the virus in most countries are actually the same, but there are also variations, like in China.
Yeah, that's why it kind of makes sense for China to say that it's mutating,
Yes,
but not in the other countries because they don't see those examples yet. But maybe
exactly.
they will because like there are more cases in the other countries as well. And now that they are spreading on land without the flight in between, So the environment is not so controlled as they are just arriving fresh from a flight. We could be seeing more mutations coming up.
Okay. So, uh, another thing I was thinking about China and about mutations. We speculated about this before that they had previous problems with like SARS and vaccinations against it. Also, battles against SARS. And I was thinking like these big mutations or these big changes. Not sure if we can call it mutations. The fact that the virus changed so much in the China area, could it have to do that it's actually is like influenced by like other viruses that are already present in the area, like SARS?
Um, for it to happen, I think that we would see genetical codes in much different variations.
Okay.
If it became another hybrid, because we actually see almost all the code is there. It's just losing some bits and adding some bits, but that's all.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it would
and
be far more radical change then.
Yes.
yeah, another thing is like, for here we can tell that everything is more than 99% in similarities, and the similarity of this virus comparing to SARS is actually only about 80%. So that is, um, if we would see a new kind of hybrid that is from another virus with this new coronavirus, I think the similarity would be um, really radically lower, not like 99.9%.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. I'm just reading back through all the data, which is a lot. Okay, so we mentioned before about the adenovirus, right? The brain CT scans and tissue samples taken from that patients, they show this virus is similar in character to the, more similar to the adenovirus than to SARS. Um, so and they made so when we look at this is about a Nature article written by the Wuhan lab scientists based on adenovirus samples taken from bats, and it got mutated once. And it shows a code part, and that was the AGA TCT.
Mm-hmm.
And this is present, right, in this virus.
In almost all samples. Yes.
So what does this say then?
It might be actually leaked from the lab in Wuhan, and in some publications there were reference to that it leaked from the lab, and AK could actually talk about this, I guess, a bit more because he wrote about it. But we don't know if it got leaked on purpose or if it got leaked on accident. We don't know about that.
But what
We
we
just could say that it might have actually leaked.
Yeah, leaked or done on purpose, or that's it. Maybe AK can talk about that. But the thing is, the HGA TCT code, it matters because it is specifically used in gene therapy. And so, in this code, coming from this adenovirus, where they were testing on with bats and animals, and this specific code is used in gene therapy, and it has to do with breaking the human immune system. So a virus can more easily go into your body, I think. He said more easily survive in your body. I hope I'm correct with this, by the way.
I think it's all very interesting. And I've just been staying quiet because I don't know as much about this topic as you guys do. So
I'm with you on that, AK. I'm just trying to translate what they're actually saying. Because they do it in an easy way. No, but so they were saying like it could be have been leaked from this lab, and you probably know more about that. I mean, you read
right,
about that.
yeah. I definitely agree with that. There was a study done by South Chinese scientists where they said that they believed that the virus leaked from a lab as well. And I think that all of the information that was just provided today is further evidence that it was probably leaked from a lab. The study by the scientists in South China, they said that they believed it leaked from a lab because of previous accidents that happened at the lab where um, they were doing testing on bats, and a bat pissed on somebody, and the bat blood got on somebody's clothing, and they said that these were cross contamination incidents where it's possible that a virus could have gotten out, and they were actually doing tests on SARS bats that bats that were infected by SARS. So um, yeah, I definitely think it more than likely it leaked from the lab, and what that means for humanity is has yet to be determined. Because if this has a insertion into it where a immunity, where basically it's killing immunity of humans, right? That means we might be in for hell. I mean, like they were looking into these adenoviruses, and it might be a really bad situation for humanity where something like this leaks, and we don't know what the if there could even be a vaccine or anything created to stop this if it has a genetics sequence in it to basically kill human immunity.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. And that these scientists are saying like, nah, this is more like this is like SARS, and then all the tests on like that people show that it's more like this adeno thing, and that they were actually testing in that lab for this adeno thing, for
Right.
gene therapy or whatever, like to actually,
Yeah.
yeah, because of course they want to remove the body's immune response, because if you do like therapy with something, you don't want the immune response, because that causes all the things like fever and all these things, causes all the side effects to your gene therapy if you would do it. The body doesn't respond to it, and it just gets the virus or whatever, and you're supposed to do something with it, which I assume, let's just assume that was a positive thing that they wanted to do. Then you don't want all the side effects of virus.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you.
Yeah, and
It could really be a bad situation for humanity. You know, they could have been doing um, something good, and then it could have leaked, and it has a negative effect. I mean, that's a possibility too. But I mean, this kind of looks like it's a slow, or not. I'm sorry, not a slow kill, a fast kill virus that can spread very fast because of there is a such a long incubation period and a long airborne period. You know, like this virus has an airborne period of 9 days where it can survive on surfaces, and in the human body, it can be inside your body, infecting other people. Um, Between like what is it, just 2 weeks and 14? What was it? It was
And
2 weeks.
27.
Somewhere around there. Yeah, but I mean, it's a dangerous situation.
yeah, definitely. Of course, like at the end of the episode, I think we'll probably give advice on how to actually defend yourself against this. But as of now, there is not yet any vaccine against it. There is no real cure. They're using old antiviral methods to do it, breeding support and all these things. It is just a very annoying to see actually how easy the healthcare systems in different countries are being like overrun. And so far, only China eventually, if all the numbers are even correct, was able to manage it by doing like an extreme police state style containment strategy.
Well, I don't think that China has managed it. I think that the focus has shifted from China now to other countries, and China is kind of using that as cover, in a sense. And I think what we saw coming out of China, we're now starting to see come out of Italy. We're now starting to see come out of Iran, um, and I think things are starting to pick up in the U.S., where we're starting to see quarantines and state of emergencies. There was, at least off the top of my head, 3 different states that called a state of emergency, probably more. So you know, this is really starting to pick up, and I think I want to really bring up is Iran and Italy, where we're seeing immense cases coming out of these two countries, right? Um, their hospital systems are completely overrun, exactly like China was. So this is a very quick spreading virus, and it can infect in a number of different ways. Um, the other thing that I want to say is in regards to what I said earlier about how the virus has a airborne rate of 9 days, right? The virus can stick on mail, food, any type of packaging. You know, there's all risk here for spreading this virus with manufacturing. Um, it's a really bad virus, man. It can spread in multiple different ways. You can get this virus. They've already have I think it's like 60 different cases in the U.S. where they can't explain where this came from. So I mean, like, it can come from a number of different ways, and I think it'll be all over the world within a couple months. Whether the whole world gets sick from it, I don't know, and I don't think that that's going to be the case. But I think that the estimates where they said, I read there was like an estimate of 60, 70 people around the world will get this virus. I think that that's about accurate, because of how easily this thing can spread.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now it is sad that these viruses can not really survive in hot temperatures, but like we have to make sure of that. Like the Australia thing, like how hot did you guys say it was there?
41.
Is that Celsius?
Ye- yeah, Celsius. 2 days before the collection of that sequence, it was 41 degrees.
And this virus was still active with that.
But we didn't know like which day did that person arrive. Australia. It could be one day before, not like 2 days. Yeah, not sure, but at least the day of collection, it was the highest 28 degrees Celsius.
Okay. Yeah, because with previous virus epidemics or pandemics, like the worst one, the Spanish flu, for example, it didn't survive over summer. Uh, After summer, it came back in in a worse form. It killed, actually had a far higher death rate, but it didn't survive this summer. But 41 or 42 degrees Celsius is this is a temperature that we won't even reach in Europe.
Yeah, they're also saying that this virus will survive all the way until December of next year. Or next year, this year. Fuck. Uh, I'm confusing myself. So if that's the case, I mean, we're in for a hell of a year. Like, if the virus does not go away over summer, there's going to be an estimated probably millions of people that are going to be infected and potentially even some of them dead. Like,
I'm pretty convinced we'll reach the millions within a month or so, because we're already over 100,000, I think. So, at the current rate, it is.
well, yeah, that's a million though. I'm saying millions. Like, I'm
Yeah.
talking like double number millions if it goes past summer. You know, if it survives past summer, we're kind of in trouble. Especially if there's no vaccine by then. And here's the thing: like, I'm not a preacher for vaccines. I'm not against vaccines either. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but there has been a lot of problems with vaccines in the past when they're just freshly introduced. Um, so basically, when you get a vaccine and it's fresh, and they don't know the potential uh, side effects of it, you're basically being a test rat for the government, in a sense.
Yeah, and perhaps the whole human health thing is not even the worst thing, because uh, the humans can survive such things. The death rate is not that high, but the whole system and the countries, they able to handle it. Like, you're talking about huge economic problems. You're talking about the healthcare system being like pretty much filled up with this, and not being able to treat other cases, for example, to treat other diseases. Like, most people still die from heart attacks and cancer, right? So you have to be able to treat those people too, and you have emergencies, and are these people ready for it? Like, if everything has to do with these infections, or intensive cares or emergency centers even open, but distribution of things, you're talking about a huge pressure against societies, and will probably be the biggest challenge, because, to be honest, if you're talking in full numbers, 2% death rate is a lot lower than the death rate for cancer, for example, right?
Oh well, yeah, that's true. But I mean, cancer isn't.
Contagious.
It's not contagious, but I think 1 in 3 people in the Western world nowadays gets it, some form of cancer, and it's usually the death rate is a lot higher.
That's true, but cancer doesn't have a fast kill rate like that.
True.
It has a slow kill rate. And even so, I mean, cancer is preventable in some cases. I mean, you can have tumors removed and stuff like that. It doesn't guarantee that they won't come back. but there are preventable measures there. With this, there's not, and I just want to highlight for our audience that can't see the chat. I just posted a video where in Italy the military just used a biocontainment unit to evacuate a coronavirus patient.
Is this a
Like,
short video or a long video?
it's an RT video. You would have to give credit to RT if you aired it. I don't think that they would care.
No, we have. I contacted. We are with ABB. We're allowed to use RT stuff, so I'm going to download it real quick. But I was just wondering how long it is this video. Like,
it's relatively short. But yeah, I am just dumbfounded watching that video. It's like something out of a fucking movie.
yeah.
Gene sequencing suggests that COVID-19 may have spread in the U.S. for weeks. Two cases detected weeks apart in Washington State had genetic links, suggesting that many more people in the area may be infected. So Seattle, Washington, is going to be a big, big, big epicenter for COVID-19. I think California is going to be another one in New York as well. And from there, it can spread anywhere. Those are huge, huge cities.
Yeah.
Oh, here's another headline. U.S. Senator Ted Cruz to self-quarantine after contact with COVID-19 patient. See, now we're starting to see U.S. politicians. There was also another headline that I saw where CPAC had a coronavirus case, and they said they warned everybody at the CPAC conference that they could be infected. And there was a lot of people there from CPAC. It was either CPAC or APAC. I don't remember which. One of the two. But anyway, they warned everybody who attended that they could be infected with coronavirus. So you could see how fast this is going to spread in the U.S. alone.
I'm going to play that video now. Let's see, I'm going to click it now. With credits to RT, the logo is visible too. So.
Yeah, as long as their logo is visible, it's good. Like, I've already talked to people over there. We're good.
We have permission since the embassy thing.
Okay.
Okay, it was a short clip, but show it again just for the viewers. It's like a scene from a movie, right? It's like
doesn't it look like a scene from a movie? Yeah, like the listeners and viewers to kind of get to see this. Like, holy shit.
Bill Gates thinks that
okay.
Okay. Other news.
And on Watch says in Tampa, they said if you think you have the virus, call them and they will come to test you. Do not go to the hospital, he says. So they're already worried about capacity, I think.
It's not just capacity, it's the fact that if you bring a virus into a hospital, all of those people could get fucking infected. This
Yeah,
is the
that's true.
danger of this. Like, it's the fucking danger of this thing. It's like, maybe the best thing is to home quarantine, because the fact is that, all of those people that are already sick with whatever else, they can get this virus so easily, more than people with strong immune systems. But I mean, even if you have a strong immune system, if this thing has a immune system kill switch in it,
Yeah.
one, it's a bioweapon, and two, that's one of the most dangerous bioweapons ever created in history. Like, in other news, Iowa confirms 3 cases of COVID-19. One dead as Italian prisons revolt over COVID-19 outbreaks, and now we're starting to see riots. And I've been kind of waiting for that. I kind of thought that was going to happen early on. Dow futures tumble 1,300 points as all-out oil price war adds to COVID-19 panic. 2 Maryland citizens test positive for coronavirus, bringing total to 5 in Maryland. Jesus, this is like I've got a whole news feed here. 2 more COVID-19 deaths in Washington State, raising toll to 21. Portugal president goes into self-quarantine amid COVID-19 outbreak. Illinois announces 7th COVID-19 case. See, 5 new cases in Contra Costa County, bringing California's total to 114. Massachusetts confirms 15 new COVID-19 cases. Iran says 200 died of COVID-19 in Gilan province alone. Official nationwide count says 194. So he's saying 200, they're saying 194. So we're seeing, like, all over, we're starting to see the government trying to cover this up. And it's like, I think they realize right now they're dealing with a bioweapon, and that they're trying to not really induce panic, but by doing that, you're also inducing panic. It's like,
Yeah, you should actually be open about this, of course. There's no
more
other
headlines. Yeah, I agree with you. More headlines. Oregon declares state of emergency after 7 new COVID-19 cases found. Saudi Arabia locks down Qatif region, suspends schools over COVID-19. Nebraska announces first COVID-19 patient transferred to biocontainment units. So now they're starting to use these biocontainment units. They realize what they're dealing with. They realize that this is not a normal virus.
Yeah. No, and I think we already explained a lot of that during the show. I think what is wise is that we should also tell our listeners what they can do to defend themselves against this, because you can do something, of course.
The thing is, like, I thought that myself, but I don't think I'm starting to think you can't. I'm starting to think that that this is something that really we can't do anything against normal measures, because if it has an immunity kill switch in it, right, what can we do?
We might not.
Well, wash your hands. That's one thing. But the thing is, it's like this virus can spread by way more than just you wiping your eyes or your mouth or your
Yeah,
nose. You know, like
but like you can't stop an infection maybe, but you can actually stop the symptoms of it. Like for some people it is mild, it is only causing like a cold, some fever. For others it gets a lot worse. But you can actually do something to reduce the symptoms of this. Infections are infections, right? Whatever causes them, there are still infections, and you can do something against the infections, and you can do something against other things which are caused by viruses. So you can actually reduce the symptoms of things, and for you it might be just like being sick for a week, right? If your immune system is strong, if you're healthy. So I think that will benefit listeners. But the virus itself, yeah, like you're saying, it has some kind of immune system switch why causing you to get it, whether you like it or not. That's pretty much it.
But I do think it is also possible to avoid catching it.
Of course.
Mm. Yeah, just like look at the numbers in Hong Kong. It's so close to China, and then until today, not all the borders are closed. But like because of the previous experience in SARS, um, everyone's more aware of what's happening. So people are wearing masks, really washing their hands a lot, and then avoid going to places that are crowded. And like the suspension of school and home office really help. So yeah, there are ways to actually avoid the virus from spreading so much.
And it is contagious, but it is not as contagious as like measles, for example, which is like 10 times more contagious.
Mhm.
So not everyone gets measles either. Like if you have one person and who has measles, it can infect like 12 or 14 people. Well, this has an average infection rate of 2.5%, or 2.5, I think, 2.5 people. Some would say it's 4, but that is just wherever you get
There,
your news, right?
yeah. There are also like super carrier or super spreader, whatever that is, the name. That could like spread to more people, but there are also people who are weaker and infecting the others. So there's always a range in that.
Yeah.
also speaking about Bill Gates earlier. Bill Gates is funding a home test kit for civilians in San Francisco. Now, whether this home test kit expands to other states in the U.S. is yet to be seen, but I think it's very interesting that they're producing home test kits for San Francisco. Just putting that out there.
What's special about San Francisco?
That's where um, the most cases I think in the U.S. are right now. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Now like do have like some problems with some countries and access to certain medicines and choices they make with treating patients. Like I'm uh I'm not so much when I read into these things. I don't read so much the information they give to the public, but more read like the information they give to the professional, right, to the doctors, and because you read some different things there. And I'm not saying that they're not giving the right information, by the way. Just uh, and they show the protocols the doctors have to follow, and they literally mention that certain I'm not talking about my own country, right? And they literally mention that certain medicines have to be ordered, and there's no stock of it in the country. So the choice is only made in worst case scenarios to actually use these medicines, and for the rest, in many cases, they might not even give medicines at all. They will just give you breathing support and such things, and they will actually, yeah, bet on the thing that you will cure yourself on your own while in a hospital and getting like breathing support and these things. So, and that is kind of one of the things that is a big danger in this kind of diseases, that you actually have medicine shortages. And what people should do is actually do push the governments to take care of this, because all of these medicines are available somewhere in the world. India creates most of the medicines, gets the resources from China, and they have a huge production capacity, and the prices are not that high as they claim they are. So there should be mass orders of these medicines. This is just a real quick thing in between. It's the same as with the whole masks thing. They should be mass ordered, and if they don't do this, you need to find ways to order this yourself. And another thing I noticed was that sometimes people say, like, if you don't have any symptoms, it's just always like safe to just go everywhere you want. But you have the incubation time too, and you should actually think about this. If you are like if you've been to like China or Italy or whatever recently, that you have to take note of this incubation time that can be up to 27 days. And you can walk around without having actual symptoms, but you can already have this illness. And like AK said, don't go to a hospital, but you can actually call a doctor and maybe ask for a test, because we're not sure how infectious it is if you don't have any symptoms, but you can already spread it. Maybe we don't know about this.
Well, no, they said that you can spread it when you don't have any symptoms, and that's the danger of this. I mean, it's like, you don't have any symptoms, and you go to the hospital, and then all of a sudden you infect the whole entire hospital. Like,
Yeah. See, but
this is gonna be really, really fun. I also want to note that the
don't say fun, dude.
well, it's a sarcastic fun, yeah, it's gonna be, yeah.
Yeah.
But my point, what I was gonna say is that that the DoD, or the Department of Defense, has its biological team working on looking at this virus. Do you understand that? Like, that's a huge thing. They only get involved unless it's like a biological situation, and it's a biological situation.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm glad to see that they are actually doing that, and that they are showing that to the public, that they are also following these steps, because that is what helps people the most, that they're actually realizing that something is going on, and without panicking, right? It is it doesn't mean panic. Many people think like, yeah, you guys are spreading like panic or fear or whatever. No, we're just trying to actually present the facts. So if you know the facts, then you can make like a calculated decision on what you're doing. You don't have to do like weird panicking. You have to calculate what is my best option to do. So
Yeah, it's about being prepared and being informed and not scared. But yeah, I mean, this is a scary situation for sure. I mean, anybody who says it's not is lying to you, like Trump, telling the American people one thing, saying it's nothing, it's going to pass over, and then in secret meetings, being told by health officials that this has a airborne period of 9 days where it could survive on surfaces. I mean, that's absolute insanity for him to be, shrugging that off and being like, "Oh, that's bullshit." Like, no, like that's crazy for him to tell the American people and lie to the American people that there's nothing that is to worry about this virus, right? And
Yeah, but they're all following this protocol. I mean,
right.
we're doing the same thing here in the Netherlands. Well, in Germany, like I saw this person. He went back to family. They came off this cruise ship, and they were like there were two Dutch people. They were like infected, or they were at risk of being infected, right? But they had a house in both in the Netherlands and in Germany, and then they entered the Netherlands in the harbor, and they were just greeted by people shaking their hands like it's nothing. Uh, the officials, and then they went over the border to their second house in Germany, and they were met by people in hazmat suits at the same time, and we're talking a distance of perhaps 100 miles.
Mm.
So here in the Netherlands, we're not closing schools. We're still shaking hands of people who are possibly infected, while in Germany
Well,
they're doing hazmat things. So
yeah, yeah. You're starting to see a lot of the hazmat suits come out of different countries, like we just showed Italy. Um, and I said that they did the same thing in a state in the U.S. And yeah, I mean, it's insane that anybody would still be shaking hands. I mean, foot shake, guys. Let's learn it. It's gonna be your new greeting for a while.
yeah, like yeah, it's I don't get it, and I know it has to do with reducing panic and fear, but no, you can just tell people this is the protocol now. Follow this protocol and stick to it, and we will reduce the risks. And it's not that hard. You don't have to be panic. This is the protocol from now on. If you guys want to reduce the number of infections, then do this. Like, I don't get that part. I think some governments seem to not really trust their citizens or think like we're like uh, kids or something.
Yeah, and I'm wondering what's going on with these um, biocontainment fucking containers, because like you don't see them doing it for every patient, right? They're doing it for like select patients, and I'm wondering why. Like they're not telling the whole truth here. Like, are these people potentially like carrying more of the virus than other people? Like, why? Why are they putting these people into biocontainment um, containers? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, yeah. So like right now, for example, I'm reading this RIVM, which is like the national here's like the National Health Agency, and they like for example this is what they tell their professionals, right? This is not what they tell the normal people. They tell the healthcare professionals. They say it doesn't make sense to test healthcare professionals who don't have any symptoms for the coronavirus. But we were talking about this incubation time, and
What?
this is what they say. They say no, yeah, no,
Oh god.
do not test healthcare professionals without any symptoms. Why not? You're talking about 27 days of incubation. You're talking 27 days of infection before you actually get of spreading this virus before you actually get symptoms, possibly. So you have to test everyone. You have to realize what you're dealing with. This is what I don't get, and I don't want to make people panic because this is just how governments act. The only thing you can do is actually protect yourself and the people around you. That's pretty much the only thing you can do again. Like, you have to do it yourself again, and it is it's very sad. It has to be like this. So you wear a mask if you can. If you have a mask, or if you don't have one, get one and start wearing it. And don't shake fucking hands. And wash your hands all day long if you have to. At least 20 minutes, by the way, if you wash your hands. And oh yeah, and you have to use paper towels. That is also one. Like if you have to sneeze or whatever, you have to use paper towels. This is also better. Most people already use those, I think.
Most people use tissues. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, it was like specific. I live in a country where we have these old school paper old school thing. This is made of like cloth. Like what else should we mention now? Before this all goes into panic stuff again, like people should we should end this with the whole weird panic stuff.
I don't think that that's like really at this point. I mean, it's no matter what. I mean, the governments aren't being honest, so it's like they're inducing panic themselves instead of just telling the truth. But I mean, I have to guess that they told the truth, panic too. So either way, it's going to cause panic. That's my whole thing about it. And I mean, like the thing is, like this virus can cause way more damage to the economy than anything in history, or in at least notable recent history. I mean, like, um, this virus could literally cause a depression. Like, it's not a joke. It's a serious thing. And whether that's panic or not, I mean, it's the truth, and it could happen very, very fast. The economy could collapse completely. So, I mean, just be prepared. Stock up, food, water, all that jazz.
Yeah, it does depend on how you treat it, of course. Like some companies, I think, could also benefit from it, but maybe that's weird to think like that. But there are, of course, you have the healthcare companies and the pharma. They could also benefit in some way from it. Thinking like,
Well, here's the headlines that I'm about to read for you. Okay, you ready? Route and stock futures triggers trading curbs. This is currently developing. Anxiety grips companies across the world. Let's see.
think like build up the whole industry. I think there are outstanding orders of 3 billion N95 face masks now. So if you're good at making N95 approved face masks, then you have customers for 3 billion of these masks. So get working. I've seen them. They're open orders. I'm not sure if you're talking, AK, but I can't hear you. Can you guys still hear me? Or
We can hear you, but I think that AK dropped out.
I think so too. The Smiler couldn't hear anyone either. That's weird. I couldn't hear AK anymore suddenly. That is really strange. Because the voice kept being green. It's like everything fine. Okay. Hey, so guys, we explained everything about the DNA, about the RNA codes. People should actually scroll back when the episode is done about that, and I'm not as convinced as AK that everything is lost. We might not be able to stop ourselves from getting this virus, but we can actually stop symptoms. That is infection symptoms. That is fever and the general illnesses we get from this, and we have to boost our immune systems to do this. There are some studies going back to before 1999 regarding substances such as megadosing vitamin C, for example. There are conflicting reports because there are no studies done on this specific virus yet, but there are studies done on respiratory infections caused by other things, and there are plenty of clinical trials done on these things. So that's what you can do, and you can actually change your diet a bit. You have other antiviral things that you can actually eat, like garlic, for example, is an example of an antiviral food. Maybe you guys have other suggestions.
It matters not to stay in very crowded public spaces as long as it isn't necessary. For this reason, we expect governments to take necessary measures like closing schools even for a temporary period, so that in its peak it could be prevented from spreading more, especially for people with weaker immune system.
Yeah, and I am going to. Should we go into this gold speculation thing, Amber?
We can mention a little bit because it's actually related to what we talked about, especially about Bill Gates and testing viruses, selling viruses, and this virus having been leaked from a lab, possibly.
Yeah, I was just being in doubt because we pretty much delivered just the facts, right? The speculation is always different before it turns into like some kind of, I don't want to say conspiracy theory episode. But, well, we could. And that is something listeners should note. Maybe it's unrelated, maybe not. But so there were like, in the year leading up to this, 2019, we had the speeches by Bill Gates talking about the possibility of this global pandemic, and then we had websites like foreignpolicy.com talking about the next the president in 2021 has to deal with a virus pandemic. We have other sources saying, constantly saying, like, there is this virus thing that's going to arrive, and then we see the the speech is by people like Bill Gates talking about the whole adeno virus and gene therapy. And but then we see in early November, shortly before late November, shortly before the Wuhan outbreak. I think it was 27 November. You can see it on Bloomberg.com. I think Zero Hedge mentioned it also. There were huge investments done into gold speculation, and they are speculating that gold will be 3 times the value it has now in June 2021. Now, this is not an advice to buy gold or whatever, but there is a group of investors, and they invested on the 27th of November on the New York Stock Exchange. They took 5,000 options in gold speculating, and they predicted an option means that they have like the priority buy in June 2021 to buy these gold contracts at $4,000 a piece, which is 3 times the value it is now, gold. And now that this is shortly before the outbreak, some of us were thinking that that these people might have had some knowledge about this possible outbreak, and that what kind of effect it would have on the stock markets around the world. Because the only way for gold to reach such a value, because this is a market that is thousands of billions in value, the only way it can reach that level is with a total stock market crash. So it is a pretty big bet to take on such a moment. This might be unrelated, and but I had to mention it anyway. And if you guys can help us, listeners, we want to find out who made these investments. We want to know. We've been trying to find out. We haven't got like much farther than mystery buyer. You can find this on Bloomberg.com. You can find this on Zero Hedge. Zero Hedge mentioned it too. It was before they were thrown out of social media. And this is about gold options for $4,000. So if you can help us find out who these people were, we would be very, very happy, because this should actually be this deserves a separate episode. So thanks in advance, because you guys can probably help us.
Well, I don't think that we even have enough information to create a whole episode based off of that. So
perhaps not.
Mentioning it now just to kind of stall time. My computer rebooted. I think it kind of works.
No, it depends on who turns out to be behind that. So.
Oh yeah, I agree. If we found out who was behind it, yeah, I agree. But at the point of just saying that, somebody bought put options on gold for $4,000 in 2021, which is weird because gold is way under $4,000 right now. So that makes sense.
Yeah, it's 3 times the value it is now. It can only happen with a full market collapse, because the value of the gold market is so big. You're talking, I think, 7,000 billion in the gold market is. So you need an investment of 14,000 billion to reach triple the value. And if you're guessing on an investment that large, it can only come from removing like all the the entire stock market.
Yeah, it's a full stock collapse, right? Indeed. And if that does happen, the best places to be would be in gold and potentially Bitcoin. We're not too sure about Bitcoin right now, but I think that Bitcoin will be a good hedge against it, in my opinion, because it has a set supply, unlike gold, and as long as people are trading it, it'll keep value. Um, Going back to headlines again, here we have federal agencies are preparing for disruptions. Cops are being given hazmat suits to enforce lockdowns in Spain. Um, they're calling this virus the most daunting virus in half a century. Oh God. Um, Shoppers throw punches over toilet paper in Australia. Woman sparks panic on plane by deliberately coughing on crew. Airport screeners health workers plagued by fear and anger.
Yeah. Yeah, this happens in the places where people now just starting to learn the effects of a virus like this. You become scared is the first reaction of people, of course. Uh, let's hope that it changes into discipline fast. Like you have to be disciplined in combating these things.
It's not looking too good. Robbers wearing surgical masks robbed New York City casino. Wow.
Hey, is there anything else?
I'm looking now. Hold on. It doesn't look like it now.
Smiler, Amber, is
Yeah.
there anything you guys want to mention to the listeners?
Not really for now.
I think that for the first part, we covered the basics of it, about these environmental adaptation of the virus and how it spreads, and the varieties of the virus, whether they are mutations, or different kinds of changes happening with the virus. And in the second part, we could offer more based on this information.
Yeah. So we do actually. So we actually read into all of this the virus code, right? Like every time.
Yes.
Say that again.
There's more to
Yes.
go, but yeah, kind of.
Okay, so we will actually we screen everything for anomalies, and we have the whole part about the adenovirus thing we mentioned. Um, let's say when should we do like the part 2 of this? Should we maybe like update again like in 5 days or something, or 7 days?
Yeah, maybe next Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, because we have to look at the infection rates too. Like in many countries we're at the start of the outbreak, and it's very difficult to estimate how fast it will go in different countries and how well they will adapt to it. So we day by day is very difficult to do it. It is you take like a 1 week period in between, and you can actually calculate how fast this is growing. The calculations are also like very very different. I was hoping Amaru would be on, by the way, but he isn't.
Yes, also it depends on how much data the laboratories will be releasing from their analysis results. So as long as the data accumulates to make something meaningful out of it, we can do the second part anytime, any day.
Yeah. Yeah, and we need to look into the Italy part and see if these are actually the full genetic codes they released.
Yes, because from the laboratories that we receive the genetic codes, they are for free, and in fact the other ones are behind the paywall for us. And if there is a full genetic code, we would like to get it, of course, at some point.
Yeah, these paywalls, like it is 2020. Like, why would you put genetic codes behind paywalls? Like, what is that all about? It reduces information gathering, and we have to actually do this. Like, I haven't seen anyone else do it, so yeah.
Yes, because it limits the information for researchers to freely work on, and for each publication, it makes more and more expensive, so that it is very costly to do a thorough research.
Yeah. So, and that is something we can ask from listeners to please demand from media outlets and scientific outlets to remove all paywalls from their sites, because we actually need to gather information. We do have contacts with geneticists, for example, right? So
Yes.
yeah, so we what we're reporting is not coming out of thin air. It is actually, we do have the contacts, and we actually need the information. We need to be able to gather everything, and so you guys can help us. All listeners can help us demand from all scientific outlets, all media outlets, to remove paywalls from their, at least from the articles that are in any way have to do with this virus. So we can gather all the information, and we can give it to the right people, and we can actually we're doing actual analysis of the actual virus, which is very difficult, because yeah, I am no professor in this, and we we're not we're just reporting on what we can actually find out, and we can get it from people who actually do know about this. But we have to do the collecting, and we have to do the analysis as much as we can do it. And I know Amber and Smiler, they have been working day in day out on this to the extent that they are way over our heads.
Yeah. They know way more information. That's why I stayed in that whole entire segment, because I had no idea even what they were saying. Like, some of the scientific words being thrown around, I was just like, oh yeah, nod my head. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the same problem.
But I will say, I've talked to one geneticist, and I talked to another person who is formerly involved with these biolabs, and they both agree that this is a bioweapon, without a doubt. They both agree it's a bioweapon, and they don't know if it was deliberate, obviously, or accidental, but they are in agreement that it's a bioweapon. And the one person, I promised that I wouldn't divulge their identity, but if I could, it would basically, I think, solidify a lot of people's opinions that this is a bioweapon.
Yeah, and we could at least confirm tonight that it carries code from this Adeno, which can be used as a weapon, I guess. But it was actually tested upon as a gene therapy thing. That is, it is artificial, at least. That's what we can say, right, guys?
At least we can say that it comes from samples that was being worked on for specific purposes. So it's not something natural occurring.
Yeah, so that we can safely say that. So and make of that what you want. If you can say this is a weapon. Yeah, it is at least it contains parts which are not naturally occurring. It is the safest thing to say tonight.
Well, I think you can argue it is a weapon. It's killing people, so I mean, it's a weapon. like, I don't know how else to say that. Like,
Yeah, no, and I'm not saying I disagree with you. I mean, yeah, I'm just like putting it in as conservative as possible, right? I mean, yeah. To say that, yeah, you guys are saying this is a weapon, yeah. Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you on that, like, but yeah, I'm no, like I said, I'm no doctor or whatever. It's certainly what we can prove is art. It was not naturally occurring. Not all of it. It contains parts which are not naturally occurring. So any listener can make their own conclusions from that. But was it released on purpose? That we can't conclude. We can't conclude that. It could be leaked. Like, so someone studying it could have taken it back home. Yeah.
Also, to understand the virus means that you could actually have a chance to fight against it in better ways. So far that we understand, this virus has a very high percentage of environmental adaptability, and it does its best to survive and adapt, and it succeeds in that. And that it saves that part of the code it initially took to break through human immune system. So which means that this part of the code is very important for this virus.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's also a part that's very scary for any listener. Like, I think like if you announce it like that, like it's like contains code to break through the human immune system, and
right?
yeah, what can you make of it then, right?
Yeah, really. That's where I said earlier. I mean, why I said that basically, what can we do to combat this? I mean, if it kills your immune system, I mean, not much. I'm sorry. Like, that's like the answer. If it really kills our immune systems, that's incredibly dangerous. And I'm not sure how we could even create a vaccine or a cure to stop that if it has code in it to literally kill our immune system. then again, I'm not a geneticist, so I don't know anything about that. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, me neither. But technically, the story about using certain adenoviruses for gene therapy, you would try to stop the natural immune response of the body against it. Like I said, because if you do it for a healthy purpose, then you don't need the immune response. So that part.
Hmm.
Yeah, because you don't want, like, you want to give someone a therapy. You don't want a high fever and all the respiratory infections, right? You don't want all these things. So
Right.
you just want to deliver whatever you can with your gene therapy. But then, if this part is
If you use this for a bad purpose,
yeah,
what can be done against it? That's the thing. That's the scary thing here that that I'm thinking about is that if this literally has a immune kill switch, right? What can be done against that? That's our whole body's system. You can't like redevelop a whole new immune system, can you? Like, how do we combat against something like that?
no, and the approach that is taken by doctors is not right now is not to actually combat the virus. It is to combat only the symptoms, and then hopefully people will be cured on their own. Like, the virus takes a week or two, and then you're supposed to be healthy again. And then in the meantime, you will try to reduce the symptoms as much as possible, and especially with the older people, the symptoms get worse, and they get pneumonia and these things, and it becomes very hard to stop these symptoms. But right now, they're combating only the symptoms. That is their strategy. Like, it causes a throat infection, you're treating the throat infection. It causes the bronchitis or pneumonia. You're trying to combat the pneumonia, and you're using antibiotics to remove the superinfection risk, because that is a big risk. Like, you have like a pneumonia, and that is your lungs are infected by the virus, but on top of that, you have the risk that bacteria infect at the same time, because you have reduced.
Right.
And so you're also using antibiotics to stop that bacteria, and so that's how they kind of like treat it, the symptoms. They do have some experience with that. I mean, they use these typical antiviral things. You have the Tamiflu, and you have the anti-HIV medicines, even what they're using. They have some effect, but it is not ideal. But if you're young and healthy, things like infections in your throat and stuff, they could heal on their own. But yeah. Yeah, I know. Like, that you're right about that. There's no defense against the virus. There's only a defense against symptoms at this moment, and I'll hope that they soon invent something against the actual virus. But okay, well, I think we mentioned everything.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything more. Pretty sure I got everything.
Yeah, except
As the new sequences are coming out from other countries, we will be able to understand the nature of this virus much better. For example, when we look at India, we see that there are much similarities to Italy, of course, and then among China, Italy, and India, we see that they all lose from the tail, actually, from the polytail. So it has reasons, because in India, it spread because Italians went there and they had the coronavirus. So we are comparing naturally um, Italy and India, and we see these similarities. So as we compare more, we will get more chance to be able to say more about.
Yeah, and we can also watch the possible mutations and how it adapts to the environment. And maybe you will see that it starts to change as it becomes warmer, going into the summer. Uh, yeah. So I think we're done for tonight. So there are two things I mentioned. We're looking for. One is please help us contact news agencies and scientists to scientific magazines, etc., to remove paywalls from their sites on articles about this virus, on a genetic code of this virus, so we can work together to collect it. We have many people capable of collecting things, but if they lock it behind all these walls, it becomes either harder or it becomes illegal to collect it, and we can't, as a legal activist show, we can't do illegal things. So, and second, we are looking.
Oh, you see, using Inspect Element on my own computer locally, I don't think is an illegal thing. I mean, I'm just changing some code.
No, that's fair. Yeah, if it's illegal, it's legal.
Yeah. Yeah. Got a problem, you can try to find evidence of me using Inspect Element.
No, it won't be possible. I'm thinking it might even be allowed for educational purposes, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, certainly. You can remove all paywalls using Inspect Element. The thing is, they shouldn't have these paywalls anyway, so I don't really give a fuck. I mean, what are they gonna say? Oh, you gave out illegal information about how to use Inspect Element to delete our paywall. Like, no, I did nothing of the sort.
Yeah, sometimes you read and it actually uses like JavaScript or something to load it. You can actually block JavaScript and it doesn't load it. But
All sorts of different things.
Yeah, that is also illegal to do. But yeah, and
How so? It's illegal to block a
no, I said
a
legal,
script.
legal.
Oh, legal. Okay, I thought you said illegal. I was like, hold on. Illegal
Yeah.
to block a script on my own computer? I think not.
Yeah, and second, it might be unrelated, might be not unrelated, and that is the request. Please help us find out who did the speculating into gold on the 27th of November, 2019. Who who bought the options and was convinced that gold would have triple the value it has now in June 2021. $4,000 as compared to like $1,500 now, so for a troy ounce. And this was a speculation of 2 billion in one day, 2 billion in options, and this is just a single day, and it went on multiple days. So.
It's got to be a firm. It can't be like 2 billion in one day, and then it goes on for multiple days, right? It's got to be a firm. It can't be a single person. It's got to be a group. Got to be a financial firm. It has to be.
Yeah, and why it matters, who throws away 2 billion in a single night in a casino? You don't. So there must have been a reason why they believed this gold could have this value. And the only implication is that you're talking about the stock market collapse. I want to know why
Mm,
they believe this.
well, the derivatives are imploding. I mean, that's obvious. I mean, it's a ticking time bomb. It's been going,
Oh yeah.
ready to go for, I'd say, 2 years, but it didn't go the last 2 years. So I think they're putting their bet on 2020. And then in addition to that, there's a whole slew of different issues that are kind of colliding at once. Like we have the Dow going up to unheard of points. And we also have various different banks that are starting to implode. Like, what the fuck is the bank? I can't even remember off the top of my head now. Um, it's, UBC? Was it UBC Bank? HSBC is another one. Um, these banks, and there's a bank in Germany. What's the bank in Germany, Mark? I know you know it.
Deutsche Bank is the biggest one.
Deutsche, yeah, Deutsche Bank, right? Those banks are all starting to implode. So with derivatives collapsing and the banks also collapsing, the economy getting ready to collapse on the Dow going up like unheard of, basically bubble prices, right? I think it's a good bet that they would take out against gold, but I think that that's a lot of money that they put out, and so yeah,
Yeah,
I can almost bet money it's Goldman Sachs.
I wouldn't be surprised by that. uh, yeah, like with Deutsche Bank and with big American banks, it all depends on are there any buyers for your toxic investments. And yeah, well, everything goes bad, there won't be any buyers for your toxic investments because they have very good salespeople and they will try to put the debts on others. They will sell it as a piece of gold to your bank in another country. So it moves. Like you have
I
toxic.
found I found out who did it. It's no longer a mystery buyer. It was Goldman Sachs. I was right.
Do you have any article on that? Maybe you can post it in the chat.
Yeah. God.
If that is true, that is a weird link because they are all over the White House.
According to that article, it was Goldman Sachs. Because they're talking about, in that article, they're saying Goldman Sachs recommends buying the precious metal at $4,000.
I see it. Yeah, they are at least involved with that. Oh yeah.
It's funny. I just googled Goldman Sachs gold put options 4,000, and I got.
Yeah. They do. Yeah, they do maintain their target of 1,600 per ounce for gold, but reasoning factors include heightened political uncertainty and an only modest acceleration in growth-supported investment demand. That is November 25. So, but it is strange that only 2 days later there are these huge trades.
Yeah, it was Goldman. Like, it's obvious based off of reading that. Like, that's where I'm getting my estimate from, because it was bought. That article's 25th, right? And then it was bought on the 27th.
yeah, you can pretty much read it in between the lines that they are
Yeah.
saying like keep gold or invest in gold, but it will only grow slowly, but it will still grow.
Uh huh.
Uh, and then these guys say like, okay, well, it's going to triple in value, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's very obvious. It's very obvious that it was them.
Or someone connected to them, but Goldman Sachs makes it interesting because they are so deeply involved with the U.S. government.
Yeah, that's true. Trump basically filled the swamp with all Goldman Sachs cronies.
Yeah.
That's definitely true.
Yes, that's really a big secret. They're all in the White House. By the way, is it like there are other parties too? By the way, that's promoting gold shortly before that, but yeah. Let's see. Yeah, keep buying gold to brace for crisis. The Serbian leader tells the bank, November 19. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Goldman. That's my opinion. But anyway, I think we should close this show up. It's getting a little too long, and I think a lot of the information in this episode, especially in the beginning, is very important. So shouldn't make it too long.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, we mentioned everything. We'll be live again with probably a part 2 on this in 7 days, but we will have other shows in between, of course. We'll probably take 7 days in between about this whole coronavirus exposed series, because we need to get one, we need to get the genetic codes, and two, we need to look at how it is actually spreading to get a good picture of it, and we need to be able to do the research. And I want to thank everyone for listening tonight, and thanks for sharing too. You guys listened in massive numbers, which is epic. And oh yeah, and yeah, well, this evening, or for some it will be this Monday, we will have a guest for. So we will go live again, and we will have an episode about Assange, free speech, free press, cypherpunks, and a Bitcoin. And our guest is Milos
That should be
Matuszek.
fun.
Yeah, Milos Matuszek is our guest, and ZK says this should be fun and it's worth listen to. So we will
Especially,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, especially if he reveals the secret that cypherpunks built Bitcoin, because everybody's been saying Satoshi Nakamoto and everything for years, and the fact is that Tim May and Dr. Adam Beck and Hal Finney and all these people and Julian Assange were all a part of the cypherpunks mailing list and involved in the development of Bitcoin. And the reason that the early Satoshi Nakamoto emails say we are all Satoshi is because Satoshi Nakamoto is not one person, it was a team of developers. All right, that's all I got to say.
So you want Milos to actually make
It would be interesting if he did. That's all. I'm just saying. Just saying. I might question him on it. I honestly, like, I'll see where the interview goes and everything. But hey, if the opportunity comes up, I'm gonna spring the question, man.
You
'Cause,
can,
like-
but I'm convinced the cyberpunk scientists and Omerta with each other, and it's not going to happen. But it could. Maybe it could.
Well, the thing is, it's obvious, you know. It's so obvious when you look up all the evidence and everything. And I've already talked to one of the old cypherpunks, and they literally told me that the cypherpunk mailing list developed Bitcoin, and I was like, no fucking way. And then they started showing me all this like old proof. So I mean, like, and I posted a lot of the old proof. So yeah. Um, so
Just
if
ask
anybody
him.
disputes that, you could just go look at my Twitter and actually go search just cypherpunks and it'll come up. But
Well,
yeah, it's like
just ask him tomorrow, or maybe he will talk about it. He wanted to talk about cypherpunks himself, so this is part of it. He wanted to talk about Bitcoin too himself, so this is part of it.
sounds fun to me, man. Like, yeah, let's do it.
It will be at 9 p.m. UK time.
I've-
That is GMT. 9 p.m. GMT. We will go live.
All right. Well, I've got a lot of crypto journalist connects. So I mean, if he drops some bombshell, like I can get it everywhere within an hour.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. Like, everyone in that market. Well, he will be here in the server. You can just ask him anything. Like, he'll be fine. So, yeah, everyone, thanks for listening. Please share it around. And if you like free press, free speech, and you like all crypto stuff, cyberpunks, and you support Julian Assange, then join in tomorrow and listen to us again. And you will love tomorrow's episode. Good night.